Imagine this. Your husband, the Emperor of Japan, is dead. You are pregnant, and a god, speaking through your own voice, has told you to raise an army and cross the sea to conquer a foreign kingdom. What do? If you are Empress Jingū, you strap on armor, consult the tides, and you go to war. In 200 AD, a woman seized control of an empire through grief, divine conviction, and sheer will. She commanded fleets, crushed rebellions, and governed Japan for nearly 70 years. And yet, for centuries, historians debated whether she even existed. This is the story of Empress Jingū, Japan's most extraordinary ruler. A warrior, a shaman, a mother, and a woman who refused to be erased. Before we tell her story, we need to answer the most fundamental question. Was Empress Jingū a real person? The honest answer is, we don't know for certain. And that itself is part of what makes her so fascinating. Empress Jingū appears in two of the oldest surviving texts in Japanese history. The Kojiki, compiled in 712 AD, and the Nihon Shoki, written just 8 years later. Both present her as a real ruler, the Empress Regent who governed Japan from approximately 201 to 269 AD. For centuries, she was counted as Japan's 15th sovereign. Her image appeared on the country's very first paper currency in 1881. Songs were written in her honor. Shrines were dedicated to her name. Then, during the Meiji period, scholars re-examined the ancient records. Because the evidence for her exact historical existence was thin, she was officially removed from the imperial list. Her son, Emperor Ojin, became the 15th emperor. She was reclassified as semi-legendary. But semi-legendary does not mean invented. Archaeologists have found evidence of shamaness queens ruling ancient Japan. Some historians believe Jingu may be a composite, absorbing the stories of multiple real women who held power in this period. What is not in doubt? The story itself. And what a story it is. According to the chronicles, Jingu was born around 169 AD under the name Okinaga Tarashi Hime, meaning the long-breathed princess of the spirit. Her lineage was extraordinary on both sides. Her father, Prince Okinaga Sukune, was a descendant of Japan's 9th emperor, but it was her mother's bloodline that would define her destiny. Her mother descended from Ameno Hiboko, a legendary Korean prince who had crossed the sea to Japan generations before. This meant that Jingu carried both Japanese imperial blood and Korean heritage, a woman of two worlds, perhaps suited to bridge them. As a young woman, Jingu was renowned for three things: her intelligence, her beauty, and her ability to channel the divine. In ancient Japan, certain women of noble birth served as spirit mediums, vessels through which the gods could speak. These women were known as Miko, shamaness priestesses. Jingu was one of them, and the gods had plans for her. Jingu married Emperor Chuai, Japan's 14th sovereign, and became his empress consort. Together, they ruled, traveled, and faced the ongoing challenge of rebellious peoples in Kyushu, the southernmost of Japan's main islands. It was during one of these military campaigns, at the Kashihi Palace in Kyushu, that everything changed. The emperor called a war council. His generals debated strategies. And then, Jingu fell into a trance. Through her mouth, a god spoke. The god's message was striking. "Forget the Kumaso," the divine voice said. "There is a greater prize. Across the sea to the west lies the land of Silla, rich in gold and silver. Turn your armies there, and it shall be yours without a single drawn sword." Emperor Chuai listened, and then, fatally, he refused to believe it. "No such land exists," the emperor said, looking out to sea. "I see nothing but ocean." The god's response came through Jingu's voice again, this time cold with fury. "You shall not have this land, but your wife is with child. That child will inherit what you have rejected, and you will not live to see it." Within days, Emperor Chuai was dead. Japan had no emperor, and his pregnant empress was standing at the edge of history. What happened next is remarkable. Rather than retreat into mourning, rather than wait for a male regent to be appointed, Jingu acted. She purified herself in ritual. consulted the gods again, and then made an announcement to the imperial court and generals assembled before her. She told them, "Mobilizing troops to make war is a grave decision. I wish to assume full responsibility. If our expedition proves successful, it will be to your credit. If it does not, I will take all the blame." The warriors voted unanimously in her favor. She was pregnant, she was widowed, and she had just talked an entire military command into following her across the sea. But first, the rebels within Japan had to be dealt with. Emperor Chuai had 2 sons from a previous consort. When they learned that Jingu's unborn child would inherit the throne, they raised armies. Jingu's forces outmaneuvered them through deception and strategy. One prince was killed, the other drowned himself in Lake Biwa. Japan was unified. The seas were waiting. The campaign against the kingdoms of Silla, Baekje, and Goguryeo on the Korean peninsula is the most celebrated and most contested episode in Jingu's legend. Before she set sail, Jingu performed a sacred ritual at the shore. She prayed to the sea god Watatsumi and received 2 divine jewels, one that controlled the rising tide, one that controlled the falling tide. Then, in one of the most extraordinary details in any ancient chronicle, Jingu bound stones to her abdomen. She was determined to delay childbirth until the campaign was complete. The fleet crossed to Korea, and according to the Nihon Shoki, what followed was not a bloody battle, it was a stunning surrender. When the king of Silla saw Jingu's fleet, vast, disciplined, seemingly guided by the very tides, he reportedly fell to his knees. He offered tribute. He swore allegiance to the Japanese court. He sent horses, craftspeople, and treasures. Baekje followed. The campaign was won without a single Japanese soldier falling in battle. Historians note that Korean records do not confirm a Japanese conquest in this period. The story may be mythologized. But archaeology does suggest that by the 4th century AD, Japan had significant influence over parts of the Korean peninsula. 3 years after departing Japan, Empress Jingū returned home, victorious and finally ready to give birth. Her son, born during the return voyage, would become Emperor Oljin, later deified as Hachiman, the Shinto god of war and archery, one of the most widely worshipped deities in Japan to this day. The warrior empress had given birth to a god. Jingu's conquest was not the end of her story. It was, in many ways, the beginning. She returned to Japan as regent, ruling in place of her infant son Emperor Oljin until he came of age. But Oljin did not take the throne for decades, and so Jingu governed, year after year, decade after decade. Her title in the ancient chronicles is Nakatsumera Mikoto, she who carries the imperial duties between emperors. It was a role created for women exactly like her, shamaness queens who held the nation together in the space between reigns. Under Jingu's regency, Japan maintained its relationship with the Korean kingdoms. In 247 AD, when Silla seized tribute gifts meant for the Japanese court, Jingu dispatched forces and allied with Baekje to reclaim them. In 253 AD, the king of Baekje sent Jingu a 7-branched sword, an extraordinary ceremonial weapon, as a gift of alliance. That sword is believed to still exist today, preserved in the Isonokami Shrine in Nara, Japan. She died in 269 AD, at approximately 100 years of age. Her reign of 69 years as regent stands as one of the longest in Japanese imperial history. And yet, this is the woman history almost erased. In 1881, Empress Jingū became the first woman ever to appear on a Japanese banknote. Her image, regal, composed, powerful, circulated through the Japanese economy for years. Then came the Meiji era. Scholars reviewed the ancient records with skeptical methodology. Without sufficient archaeological confirmation, Jingu was reclassified as semi-legendary. She was removed from the official list of emperors. The irony is not subtle. A woman who ruled for nearly 7 decades was deemed less historically credible than many male emperors from the same era, about whom we know equally little. but legend has a way of outlasting official history. Empress Jingū is enshrined and worshipped at Sumiyoshi Grand Shrine in Osaka, one of Japan's most ancient and venerated Shinto sites. At Kashi Shrine in Fukuoka, she is honored as a founding protector. And in the modern world, as scholars revisit ancient sources with fresh eyes, as the stories of powerful women are being recovered and retold, Empress Jingū is having a renaissance. She was, in the truest sense, an Onna Bugeisha, a female master of martial and spiritual arts. She governed through crisis. She commanded through conviction. She built an empire through intelligence, divine authority, and extraordinary courage. Real or legendary, she is real enough. History has a habit of deciding who matters, and it has a long, well-documented habit of deciding that women, especially powerful women, matter less. Empress Jingū commanded armies. She channeled gods. She held an empire together for nearly 7 decades. She gave birth to a deity, and she was almost removed from history with a single administrative decision. That is why stories like this one matter. That is why we tell them. If you want more stories of the women history tried to forget, subscribe to ChronosX documentary. Every week, we go back to the archives and pull forward the names that deserve to be remembered. Empress Jingū, remembered.